Amanda?
Any of those firearms that you seized at the house, were any of them legally owned by any of the victims?
No. Which is oftentimes the case in the gun violence that we are involved in. The predominant, overwhelmingly predominant number of times and circumstances, they are not legally owned.
Do you know where they came from?
At this point, we're starting to get some information with our partners, the federal partners, with our NIBIN, with our backgrounds from our federal partners in ATF and others. We will be able to report more at some point, nothing that we can share right now. But again, that is part of our challenge, is illegal guns. I mentioned it at the press conference the other day. Guns in the hands of those who are not able to possess them, and in that sense, they're illegal guns.
Colonel, Friday you said that you had accounted for everybody involved. Do you
Right.
anticipate any other arrests?
We do. We have accounted for everyone involved. We do anticipate further arrests, and we will announce those as we can.
And what further charges might you?
They would be similar charges from other individuals. The 4 who have been charged, I'll say, are the 4 who came from the truck, the original assailant vehicle. Those are the first 4 who have been charged. So we anticipate there may be more charges.
Colonel, was there a specific, we talked about this was a gang situation between 2 neighborhood groups.
Right.
Was there any particular incident that sparked what happened on Thursday?
That's still under investigation, and we spoke about nowadays, oftentimes it's social media. It's all senseless, I'll tell you that. It's over nothing real important, but oftentimes it's over comments made or insults that are directed at others on social media or from previous disputes or gang violence, gun violence.
Can you say how many of these people have faced charges before, whether it be for guns or other similar activities?
I'd have to check, but at least one of them was out on bail, I believe. So Ricardo Cosme Tejada was out on a charge from the Rhode Island State Police, a ghost gun charge, and that's why he's being held as a violator. As far as the records on each of them, I don't have those in front of me.
Colonel,
Bill.
was there anyone or is there anyone under investigation in this matter who was incarcerated on Thursday when this took place at the ACI?
Not that I'm aware of.
Chief, would you categorize this as an ambush shooting? An ambush-style shooting?
Yes, and again, it is typically the case with these groups and gangs that target each other. They try to sneak up and catch the others, in their terms, slipping, where they're not paying attention to what may come. But as we saw here, that other group had firearms readily accessible and available to them. So, yes, in that sense, it was an ambush.
Well, the community said that they were already waiting for the other guy to show up in the house.
They oftentimes are.
They were ready.
Yeah, and we saw as well, and we reported the other day, and that's why we sent the photos later back in. They're very much so on our radar. Back in 2017, we conducted a search warrant raid at that same address with some of the same names involved, and there were 10 firearms that were seized in a court-ordered, signed by a judge, search warrant, 5 rifles and 5 semi-automatic pistols, some serious firepower, as we sent to you. So 4 years ago, they had 10 guns at that same address. Thursday night, and then on Friday, we reported that we conducted a search warrant and seized 8. And I will tell you that those 8 guns were just as potent and powerful as the 10 seized in 2017. So there lies our daunting challenge. There are so many firearms out there, and powerful ones. We've spoken about how on scenes now it's not just oftentimes just one gun, maybe a revolver, and 3 or 4 shots fired. It's more than one gun. It's several rounds fired. In this case, we know the number was unbelievable. But we've had a couple this year. We had 2 in a row where there were 28 rounds fired, and within that same couple of day period, 25. So 43 rounds fired in 2 separate incidents. That was about a month ago, and then we have this, so. The firepower that we're encountering out there is staggering. The Providence Police, we seized, with arrest, a couple more guns over the weekend. One by a young man who is part of one of these groups, was arrested in the Oneyville section, Manhattan Avenue section of the city, illegally possessing a firearm. So again, the men and women of the Providence Police Department have done some unbelievable work in getting, the most important thing we can do is getting these firearms off the street and getting these individuals who are prone to this type of activity. So we've seized 86 guns so far this year, 80 with an arrest. Those are more than double year-to-date from last year. And if we continue at this pace, we will set a record that we don't want to set in seizing firearms and making arrests for young men in the community illegally possessing those firearms. 86 and 80. That's a staggering number. And that's some great work, safely getting all of those firearms off the street. And look, I've said it before, I think these people have to be, it's with certain proportional consequences they have to be held to. They need to be held accountable. It's hard enough to apprehend somebody with a firearm, and once we do, we're frustrated when these same young men hit the street. So if they've been captured before in possession of a gun, and then they're released, you can only imagine. It's not only part of law enforcement's frustration, certainly the mayors, the community, the moms of these victims. It's frustrating that these young men think that they can go out there in brazen style. They're emboldened to carry firearms and shoot indiscriminately with no human regard at each other. And we saw it in a neighboring community over the weekend too. A big number of shots fired. It's not good.
You have any idea that people shot in Clements Street and the person killed in Pop Street?
Yes, so as well, since our incident on Thursday, we had our homicide on Friday, and I'll identify that young man too, as the family has been notified. So one night later, we have a gunshot victim in a car on Pope Street, 25-year-old young man. He was dead upon arrival, upon our arrival in the ME's arrival. His name is Tyreek Grundy. He was in the back seat of a vehicle on Pope Street. We are actively investigating 2 assailants who walked up to that car. So that investigation is pretty active. And look, as well, we're constantly looking to see which of these are related. Could that be related to any of these? Maybe in the neighboring town, the one in Pawtucket, maybe, of course. They all could be related. We're not saying they are, but so that young man is shot on Friday, and then on Saturday afternoon, in the gorgeous sunshine day, while many are enjoying a day in the park, there are 2 young men shot. Car pulls up, people get out and fired. I believe it was 10 rounds at 2 young men who are struck. Thank God, minor type injuries, not life-threatening, I should say, not life-threatening injuries in the arm and the leg.
But you want to ID the person shot? The 2 person charged and got shot in Clements Street. What is the name?
The major just left. I don't know if their families have been notified. I know their names. I'm not quite sure if their families have been fully identified. Yeah, we know them.
To be
Do you
clear,
have suspects in them?
Not that we can speak of.
to be clear, you're not ruling out the possibility that the Pawtucket and Providence shootings are related.
Correct. I would not rule out that possibility.
Chief, the Southside and Lakeside gangs, have they been connected at all to any other shootings this year?
So yeah, and so what I'll say is that's why it's so important when we seize firearms, and we have a great number of firearms now to operate with, and unfortunately shell casings. So whenever we seize firearms or ballistics, we turn that over to the crime lab, and through NIBIN, the National Integrated Ballistics Intelligence Network, we're able to gather a lot of information that is important to our investigation. So I'd be shocked if some of these don't come back to other locations and other individuals who have been shot, or certainly maybe even to some of these individuals that we're speaking about and could be charged there.
All right.
Question for the mayor, if I might. Mayor, this morning you talked about all of the people you've spoken to over the last few days and some of the requests they've made for the kinds of services and the kinds of mentorships and
Yeah.
other things that they have you also been fielding calls specific to these shootings, and what are people telling you about the gun violence?
Yeah, so I've been in touch with a lot of members in the community over the past 3 or 4 days, and everyone's really concerned. Everyone's really heartbroken, and people are scared. I want to add to a couple of things that the chief mentioned. You know, first of all, I want to commend the chief and the entire Providence Police Department. You know, they've been working overtime, and you know, I've been with them and talking to neighbors, reaching out to the community, and trying to be responsive to everyone out there. On top of that, I get reports every single morning from what happened the night before, and you know, I hear about all of the gun seizures that they make. The number of guns that are being seized and the kinds of guns that are being seized, it's just scary. The men and women in the Providence Police Department, they do an incredible job getting these guns off of the streets at risk to themselves, and you know, we haven't had the highly publicized incidents that we've had in other cities. So it's a credit to the work that they do here. I do also want to lament that perhaps 10 years ago, if you get a gun off the street, you know that you're preventing a homicide, you're preventing a shooting. There are just so many guns out there right now, and it seems as though this constant cat and mouse. You may get a gun off the street, but there are still a lot of other guns out there. Something has to be done. Look, Congressman Cicilline made this point earlier. This is a uniquely American phenomenon. There are more guns in the United States than people. We are the only country in the world that has that, and that's why we have the level of violence that we're seeing here and we're seeing throughout the country right now. That's a problem. So, and then the last piece, in terms of what the community has been telling me, they want more resources. They want mentorship programs. They want summer jobs for our kids. They want nonviolence training and de-escalation training for the entire community. There's definitely things that we can do, and everyone, this is really heartening, everyone wants to be part of the solution. And so this is not a community that has thrown in the towel and said things are too far gone. In fact, it's the opposite. It's a community that continues to say this is not us and we're not going to allow it, and they want to be part of the solution. So as we look at investments that we'll be making with the American Rescue Plan dollars, my understanding, we still haven't received those dollars in our bank account, but it should be coming soon. We want to put those dollars out on the street and resources into the community that are reeling from this gun violence. And we want to make sure that we don't lose a whole generation here. We want to invest these resources where they're needed most right now.
What order of magnitude do you, how much do you think it would take? Can you see earmarking for those kinds of programs?
Oh, for sure. We will definitely set a significant amount aside. I don't know what the scale is. We have to understand what does it take to run these programs, what does it take to put them in place. But we'll be looking to invest significant dollars.
Mayor, have you
Yeah.
considered hiring more police officers? Providence is one of the few cities, I think there's actually more firefighters than police.
Yeah.
So what about putting more police out into the streets in the community?
Yeah, and so that's part of our budget submission, my budget submission to the City Council. The budget includes funding for an academy of 50 new police officers that we hope to get started as soon as the budget is passed.
And just a quick follow-up. Does it seem now it was a mistake with erasing the gang database so police don't have all the tools to identify all the individuals out there? Because you think of it, the amount of gangs are increasing seemingly because it's become harder for police to track who's connected.
Yeah, so I believe the non-use of the gang database is based on some tech needs on our side, but I'll let the chief respond to that.
So yes, I mean, the men and women who work in the districts responsible, predominantly 2, 4, 5, and 7, the men and women in intelligence unit and the violent crime task force, they know the individuals. And they have it here because they're responding to the scenes, they interact with these individuals. But look, yeah, we had the capability with the gang database to have a more streamlined and comprehensive list. So yeah, but
Is that something, Chief, that if it was reinstituted, it could?
so we've never lost the ability to hold a gang database. We've reformatted based on the ordinance how we categorize those individuals. So where it is right now is the previous system is dormant, so we do not have a gang database that we're utilizing right now. We still have the ability to have one under the new ordinance, and we're ready to get that up and running very shortly. I spoke with the IT people the other day. We will have a gang database under the guide of the ordinance.
Chief, just a quick follow-up, Chief. Is it possible that federal charges could be brought in here? Because what's being described is really what brought down organized crime, which is the RICO statute, which is a leader instructs underlings to carry out a shooting and so forth. Isn't that something that maybe should be looked
So
at?
we always look at that, and if we have the ability, in this case or in any case, we do move in that direction. As you know, this department, at least a couple of cases, 2 separate Latin King RICO cases, and if we have the evidence to do it here, yes, absolutely. We would consider that.
And that's 4 individuals, common purpose, planning, conspiracy, and carried out.
We-
I mean, that would seem to be a RICO case.
That option is open, yes.
Chief, quick question, any of the guns used in the shooting between the 2 gangs, groups, were any of them, obtained legally? Did any of them have a permit to have them, or were they all illegal?
Obtained originally legally?
Correct. Do they- any of them
We
have-
don't have all of that information yet from our partners on the federal side, but I would venture to say that some were legally at some point. You know, we have that issue we speak about with straw purchasers, so that's a possibility that someone purchased it legally, and then through the black market, that gun ends up on the street. Yes, that's,
I have a question.
but again, all that's being vetted out.
Just one more.
I'll go to Bill and Ronaldo, and then that's,
Bill,
Chief, there's statewide chatter that Providence is dangerous. We hear it
Yep.
in media, social media. Your response to that?
so look, we've had a bad run, and the last couple of weeks have been dangerous in Providence. But for the men and women of the Providence Police Department efforts here, we continue to take guns off the street after these couple of really bad incidents, but they're all targeted offenses. They're not random. And that's the difference, and we've seen that most of our careers here. They're targeted offenses, and that's been the one constant. So is Providence safe? It is safe. And I say this all the time, it's, you know, we've all done some deep research on victimization. To some extent, these young men have, today's victim is tomorrow's shooter, today's shooter is tomorrow's victim. We've seen that over and over and over again.